Hey folks, this is Matt Rainwater, and today we're going to try something a little bit different. I feel like I've said this before, but we're going to try something a little bit different as soon as I actually plug in my keyboard here. Um, so I had this idea last night because I was just like watching Mystery Science Theater 3000, just kind of like, I don't know, I had this weird feeling I haven't had in a long time, which was that I just wanted to doodle and draw and kind of, I don't know, just mess around, which I haven't really done a whole lot of in kind of a while. Like that's kind of the one thing about with working on Trailer Park Warlock is don't really often get the impulse to want to doodle or sketch or whatnot. And so I had this impulse and I followed it. And right now I'm just kind of cleaning. This sketch was so just like I was just trying to get notes on paper and get ideas out, and because I was drawing on like a sketch pad, right? And I figured, okay, I'll just transfer this over to the computer and I'll actually get this idea out, right? At least, or what I'm trying to say is, I have the idea out, right? I have the basics or the general concept, but now I need to like really put it together. And right now I'm just doing some really quick cleanup before I start to work a little harder on this sketch. I don't know if I'm explaining myself perfectly. Maybe the idea will come to you in a moment. But I mean, basically, the way I was thinking about this, and I've done this before in the past, where like if I have paper, if I have availability to paper, because I like to draw on paper, I haven't drawn on paper in a while, and it feels very different, right, to draw on paper versus on like drawing on a tablet screen or whatever. You get that. You get the feel of the texture of the paper. It's kind of a nice. To me, it can be a very nice kind of thing. And so I just took a picture of the sketch that I did on my cell phone, uploaded it to my Google Drive folder, and then transferred it over to Clip Studio. And so we're going to see what I come up with here. Basically, right now what I'm about to do is I'm about to clean up this sketch, right? Like I have like a very weird I don't know if you are seeing what I had with this rough drawing. It was a lot of stuff. I was just putting ideas down on paper basically. Um, Within the same sketch, which looks chaotic, right? Because it is chaotic. And basically I figured, well, I know what I'm trying to say to myself, so I have the idea down, right? If I know what I'm saying to myself, I can clean it up enough later on to actually make it into a coherent like character design, because that's sort of the end goal, right? And this isn't for a particular story or anything. This is just a character design for the sake of designing a character, drawing somebody. Maybe it leads to story ideas, but kind of this is not the entire idea, because I think I want to do I kind of want to make this a video series. And one of the things I'm going to work on are character designs for a story that will follow after Trailer Park Warlock. And I have a pretty good idea of what that story is going to be now. And I've been noodling around on it basically since last October. Um, what happened is I went on a road trip to Taos, New Mexico last year, just to get away, just to like have a change of scenery, and also because I just wanted to go to Taos. It was a place that I had been to as a kid, and just wanted to revisit it and see what it was like. And I enjoyed my trip. I went with my friend Horace, and we got to hang out, see the place. I worked a lot on Trailer Park Warlock, but one of the things I did while I was there is I hung out at coffee shop. It's technically not in Taos. It's in Prado, which is like right next to Taos. It was like a mile, maybe even only a half a mile walk away from my Airbnb. And that's where I worked, and there were a lot of artists there, and I kind of got to meet some people and just get to kind of know the locals, and it was a cool hang. And during my time there, some ideas started to congeal for a next story. And so all that is prefaced to say, like, something y'all will probably see me do within this video series if it fleshes out in the way that I want it to flesh out is you'll get to see me work on some character designs for the next story. I'm not going to say what the name of the story is. I have a name nailed down. I just don't want to give too much away yet. One of the main reasons for that is it's still, how should I say? It's still like kind of in that fresh state. And maybe this is a superstitious thing or whatever, but it's like I don't want to say with certainty what it is just yet because things might change. The story's still in sort of the nebulous formative state where little details can change here or there. Even the whole story can change entirely. Like when I was coming up with the idea for the story in Taos, I was like, oh, well, maybe I should make the story set in New Mexico. And now I'm like, I think I want to set the story in Florida. And which is totally entirely different environment, right? But I did, in my mind, I wanted it to be kind of a southern story. In Florida's its own kind of place. You know, there's a couple of states that I mean, a lot of states are really their own kind of place, but Florida is its own kind of place, but is also very much a southern kind of state. And has some of those oddities. That's the word we'll go with. Oddities. That kind of go with southern states. So anyway, this character I'm designing right now has nothing to do with that. It's just kind of an idea that popped up in my head while I was doodling. We'll see what we end up with. Because I don't know, details will change as we go along here. And that's kind of how it should go, right, when you're designing a character. But I was kind of going for, like, I don't know, I was starting off, like, okay, Zen monk, smoking, glasses. And then I was thinking about the character Krillin in Dragon Ball Z. And Krillin has those dots on his head that I don't know the story of Dragon Ball well enough to say particularly like what I know that he was a monk of some kind. But I was like, okay, let's go with the motif for this character is like bowling. So that's where I'm going with this. So like some kind of bowling monk. And yeah, that's the general idea for this character. It's pretty basic. Let's see. So, starting to get some of the basics set up here. An area that I'm going to have to go in and really change a bit is this character's arms because I think this arm right here is fine, but I'm not so sure about this arm. This arm doesn't, I don't know. It might not make sense. Anyway, we'll get to that bridge, right? We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So, I figured, like, you know, one of the ideas here would just be kind of show y'all what my creative process looks like, and because sometimes it's kind of random, or it's sort of chaotic, or it's sort of sudden, where I'll get an idea and I just like, okay, I need to go with this idea, see what it happens. And part of the reason I even want to talk about that is to sort of talk about creative process, right? Because a lot of times we can get too methodological where, you know, you set up rules and you follow those rules. And I think that could be useful, right? Like part of the reason why I like this idea that I'm talking with y'all about today is I was able to kind of establish a whole new rule set by which I could make videos from, right? Some ideas to have videos to do. But I don't want to just make videos for the sake of videos. I want to make videos to kind of show you what I'm working on at any given point in time. And I also want to work a little bit more on having things that I'm doing that don't have like an end goal. Or in that sense, I mean like they're not specifically for Trailer Park Warlock, or they're not specifically for some bigger project that y'all gonna ultimately see later on. Part of the reason is, oh, this foot's a little too big. Part of the reason for that is I really can't show that much of Trailer Park Warlock that I'm working on right now. There's a lot of, I've talked about this a lot in the past, there's a lot of story spoilers right now where I am. So I would like to draw, right? I would like to, on some level, have more excuse to draw without an end goal in the drawing. And I think that's what I'm trying to get at. Are the end goals so simple and not associated with something that is monetarily based or results oriented is the only word that I can figure out. Like, it doesn't have to do with getting likes, it doesn't have to do with shares, it doesn't have to do with like subscriptions or whatever. It's just like I'm just drawing something for me, right? And that's really important. And it's been really neglected for a long time for me. I know I look back at older sketchbooks and they are just filled with all kinds of like wild character designs and just like me trying out things. And I see a lot of people who are doing that, who are professional artists, and I think, well, they're doing that. Maybe I should do that too. Maybe I should get back into that state because maybe there's some, maybe there's some soul gold, right? There's some stuff that's just good for me. And maybe also there's some stuff in there that just will have return, like dividends, return on investment in a sense, that will show up in Trailer Park Warlock or anything else that I work on. And so, oddly enough, right, I'm talking about that, and it's like I'm still sort of thinking in terms of reward, result, etc. I don't know if it can be entirely helped, right? I think there's a point that you get as a person or as an artist or as like or in a career or whatever that you kind of have to think about, all right, well, ideally every little thing I do, I would like to be able to feed back into my larger goals. I think that's a good way of looking at it. I think it's how many fingers is this? Is this 1, 2, 3? Hey, wait a minute. This is not the first. By the way, this is not the first time this has ever happened. Oops. All right, one less finger. What was I talking about? Oh, so like what I was saying was, it's not necessarily a terrible idea to think in that way, right? It's sort of like, if you're a farmer, you have to think in that way. You want to make sure that your resources don't go to waste. Like, you use your compost to replenish your soil, right? And what is your compost? It's literally everything that's biodegradable that either you produce or your family produces, right? Like waste, food waste, body waste, like all that stuff. the ground loves it. The ground will take it in and turn it into, compost, and that'll get eaten by worms, and that'll be dirt, and that'll be super nutritious, fertile dirt that will help raise your next crop, right? And it'll be a super delicious crop that you and your family and the people who eat your food will survive from, and they can continue that cycle into the next harvest. And ideally, you kind of want to think that way too, not just in art, but in life in general. You want to kind of live life in a way where you're not just being wasteful, right? You want to make sure that all your activities sort of feed into each other in a way that creates abundance, creates feedbacks. This is very abstract what I'm saying, and I hope it makes some sense. But the general idea is you want to be in a place with your work, with your play, where it all one kind of feeds into the next. And not everything's going to do that, right? And it's kind of nice just to sometimes do a drawing, do a painting, do whatever, without any sort of expectations, because you really do want to have no expectations. That's kind of a good place to be. In such a way that I'm thinking about these sparks in this match. You want to be in a place where you don't feel that pressure and that strain, because that can really take away from your ability to focus, to create, to be creative. Because a lot of creativity comes from being in a place where you're kind of carefree. Or if not carefree, you're at least you're not bothered. You're not stressed. You're not worried, right? Because worry can really destroy a person's ability to be creative, to pay attention, to be responsive. A lot of times stress can just make you reactive. And you don't want to be in a reactive place when you're creating, right? You want to be in a receptive, active, receptive place. I've been slowly reading through this copy of the I Ching that I got, because I want to learn about that system. It's a really interesting system to me. Learn about ancient Chinese philosophy and sort of how it functions, and I like it. It's very interesting. It's very enlightening to me about how people thought about their world in the past and how it influences our world today. How it influences sort of the way we look at things. I just find it interesting, the perspective that the ancient Chinese had in the I Ching, where it's basically this idea of there are limits in nature, and whenever you reach an upper limit, you have to reset to a lower limit. And there's kind of cycles to life. And to be in accord with nature is to be receptive to and to be aware of those cycles as they're happening. Alright. I like this. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ink it. I think I might save that for a different video. This is another idea that I was kind of having here, which is okay, what would y'all think? What if this might not be a daily kind of video. This might be a every other day kind of a thing, or just sort of when I have time, maybe 3 times a week. But the general idea was to post more often. Post a little more often. And maybe I do a character design once a week. Does that seem like a cool idea to y'all? If you're liking it, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what y'all have to say about some of this stuff. And anyway, we will talk again soon. All right? Later. Bye.